Daddy? The word stopped Robert Scott's heart. He stood in his own doorway, frozen, staring at something he couldn't understand. His 10-year-old daughter was on her knees, scrubbing the floor in a maid's uniform. Her hands were bleeding. Her face was soaked with tears. And beside her, dressed the same way, was Jennifer, the housemaid he barely knew. Robert dropped his briefcase. What the hell is going on? Robert had been gone for 6 months. Tokyo, Singapore, London, building his company into something powerful. He'd missed Ava's birthday, her school play, half her life, but he'd promised himself this was the last trip. He'd come home and make everything right. He walked through the door expecting his daughter to run to him with that bright smile she used to have. Instead, she flinched when she heard his voice. She was terrified. Jennifer stood up slowly, hands raised like she was trying to calm him down. "Mr. Scott, please, if I could just explain." "Explain what?" Robert's voice cracked. "Why is my daughter dressed like this? Why is she on her knees in her own home?" "She didn't do anything," Ava tried to say, but her voice was so small it barely came out. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs. His wife, Diane, walked down with a cup of coffee in her hand and concern painted across her face. But something about it felt wrong. Too perfect, too practiced. "Robert," she said softly, touching his arm. "Thank God you're here. I just found them like this. I don't know what's been happening while you were gone, but I think Jennifer has been getting too close to Ava, making her do things she shouldn't." Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Ava wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Jennifer, like Jennifer was the only person in the world she could trust. And that's when Robert realized something that made his stomach turn. He'd been gone for 6 months, and he had no idea what had been happening in his own house. Someone was lying, and he was about to find out who. What Robert didn't know was that a camera in the corner had recorded everything. Not just this moment, but what happened 1 hour before he walked through that door. The truth, the abuse, the cruelty his daughter had been living through, and the one person who'd been protecting her when no one else would. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Sometimes God places people in our lives not because we asked for them, but because someone we love desperately needs them. Jennifer stepped in when a father was absent. But the question is, are you truly present for the people who need you most? I hope this story reminds you that love isn't just a feeling. It's showing up, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. Now let's go back to 1 hour before Robert came home. Let's see what really happened. Only moments before Robert walked through that door, his daughter's world was falling apart. It started in the kitchen. Ava was thirsty, that's all. She climbed onto the step stool, the one with the old sunflower stickers her mum put there years ago. Her small hands reached for a glass of water, and it slipped. The glass fell, water splashed across the counter and onto the floor. Ava's heart stopped. She grabbed a towel, her hands shaking, trying to clean it up before. "What did you just do?" Diane's voice came from behind her, cold, angry. "I'm sorry," Ava whispered. "It was an accident. I'll clean it." "An accident?" Diane crossed the room fast. Too fast. She grabbed Ava's arm hard enough to hurt. "You're always breaking things, always making a mess." "I didn't mean to." "You never mean to." Diane's fingers dug deeper into Ava's skin. "But you keep doing it anyway. Maybe it's time you learned what it costs to live in this house." She dragged Ava down the hall. Ava stumbled, tears streaming down her face, trying to keep up. Upstairs, Jennifer was folding laundry when she heard crying. Not the normal cry of a child who fell or got scared. This was different, deeper, like something inside was breaking. Jennifer dropped everything and ran. She found them outside the laundry room. Ava was on the floor, face buried in her hands, shaking. Diane stood over her, holding a black maid's uniform. "Ma'am," Jennifer said carefully. "What happened?" "She spilled water," Diane said without looking at her. "She needs to learn responsibility." "She's just a child," Jennifer said gently. "It was an accident." Diane turned, her eyes cold. "She's careless, spoiled, and she's going to learn what it means to earn her place here." She shoved the uniform toward Jennifer. "Put this on her." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, please." I'm not asking. Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was staring up at her with terrified eyes that said, "Please don't leave me." Jennifer knelt beside her and took the uniform. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "I'm here." Her hands shook as she helped Ava into the rough fabric. It hung too big on the child's thin body. Ava looked so small, so lost. "Now," Diane said, pointing to the living room, "you're going to scrub that floor until it shines. Do you understand?" Ava nodded through her tears. Jennifer stood. "Ma'am, this is too much. She's frightened." "Are you questioning me?" Diane's voice went quiet. "Dangerous." Jennifer swallowed. "I'm asking you to show mercy." Diane smiled. "It wasn't kind. You want to defend her? Fine. Get on your knees too. Both of you." Jennifer's heart pounded. "Mom, do it. Or she does it alone, and I'll make sure she knows you chose to walk away." Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was shaking, waiting to see if Jennifer would stay. Jennifer knelt. She picked up a rag from the bucket Diane placed between them. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered to Ava. "I'm right here. You're not alone." Ava sobbed. "I'm sorry, Miss Jennifer." "Shh, this isn't your fault." They scrubbed side by side, Ava's small hands barely able to hold the cloth, Jennifer whispering comfort with every stroke, Diane watching from her chair with that cold smile. That's when Robert opened the door. Robert's eyes locked on Jennifer. She was on her knees beside his daughter, both of them in uniform, both of them looking guilty. His mind tried to make sense of it, tried to find an explanation that didn't tear his world apart. And the only thing he could see was Jennifer, the maid, the woman he barely knew, dressed the same way as his daughter. "Did you do this?" His voice came out harder than he meant. "Did you put her up to this?" Jennifer stood slowly, her movements careful, her hands raised like she was trying to show she meant no harm. "Mr. Scott, please, if you'll just let me explain." "Explain what?" Robert's voice cracked. "My daughter is on her knees, dressed like she works here, and you're right beside her doing the same thing. What am I supposed to think?" "Daddy, she didn't." Ava tried to speak, but her voice was so small it barely made it out. "Sweetheart, it's okay." Robert moved toward her, but Ava flinched. Actually flinched, like she was afraid of what would happen next. That stopped him cold. "Oh, Robert," Diane's voice floated down from the stairs, soft, concerned, perfectly timed. "Thank God you're finally home." She came down slowly, one hand trailing along the railing, the other holding her coffee cup like she was in a movie. Her silk robe was perfectly tied, her hair perfectly styled. Everything about her looked calm, controlled, too controlled. "I just walked in myself," Diane said, reaching for his arm. "I found them like this. I've been so worried about what's been happening while you've been away." Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Something didn't fit. "What do you mean? What's been happening?" he asked. Diane's hand tightened on his arm. "She's been overstepping, Robert." She glanced at Jennifer without really looking at her. "Getting too involved with Ava, making her do things. I don't know if it's some kind of game or—" "That's not true." Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. Diane's eyes flashed. "Excuse me?" "Ma'am." Jennifer didn't look away. "You know that's not what happened here." The air shifted. Robert felt it. Something in Jennifer's voice, something in the way Diane's smile tightened just slightly at the corners. "Are you calling me a liar?" Diane's voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath. "I'm saying there's more to this story." Robert looked at Ava. She was staring at Jennifer like she was the only safe thing in the room. Not at him, not at Diane, at Jennifer. His daughter trusted the maid more than she trusted her own family. That thought hit him like a punch to the chest. "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said carefully, "there's a security camera in the other room, the one near the bookshelf. If you check it, you'll see what really happened." Robert froze. "How do you know about that?" "I saw the technician installing it before you left. Please, just check it." Diane's face flickered, just for a second. Something close to panic crossed her eyes before she smoothed it away. "Robert, don't be ridiculous. She's obviously trying to—" But Robert was already pulling out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen, opening the security app he'd installed months ago. The app he'd almost forgotten about. Diane took a step back. "Robert, this is unnecessary. I'm telling you what I saw." "Then the camera will show the same thing." His voice was flat. The app loaded. Camera feeds appeared. He scrolled through them, finding the one Jennifer mentioned. He pressed play, and his face went white. Robert stared at his phone screen. The footage played in silence, but he didn't need sound to understand what he was seeing. Ava reaching for the glass, it falling, water spilling across the counter. Then Diane storming in, her face twisted with rage, her hand grabbing Ava's arm so hard the child's body jerked sideways, her mouth moving, shouting words Robert couldn't hear but could feel in his chest. Ava trying to apologize, trying to clean it up, her small body trembling. Diane dragging her down the hall. Then Jennifer appearing, stepping between them, her hands raised, trying to calm the situation. Diane shoving the uniform at her, forcing it into Jennifer's hands. Jennifer kneeling beside Ava, not because she wanted to, but because leaving the child alone wasn't an option. Robert's hand shook. He looked up from the phone. His eyes found Diane's. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Robert, you have to understand." "Understand what?" His voice was low, dangerous. "That you put my daughter in a maid's uniform? That you made her scrub floors like she's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "She needed discipline," Diane said quickly. Her voice was rising now, losing that careful control. "You're never here, Robert. Someone has to teach her consequences." "Consequences?" Robert's voice cracked. "She's 10 years old. She spilled water. She's careless. She destroys things. She needs to learn. She needs a parent." The words exploded out of him. "Not a warden." Diane's face went hard. "So that's it? One video and I'm the villain? What about her?" She pointed at Jennifer. "She's been manipulating Ava for months, making her dependent, acting like some kind of replacement mother." Robert looked at Jennifer. She hadn't moved, hadn't defended herself. She just stood there, hands folded, eyes down, calm, steady, like she'd been carrying this weight for so long she'd learned how to hold it without breaking. "Is that true?" Robert asked her. Jennifer looked up. Her eyes met his. "I love your daughter, Mr. Scott. That's true. But I never tried to replace anyone. I just tried to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." The words hit him like stones. She wasn't alone. Because he'd left her. He'd chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories, deals over dinners, success over his own child. He turned to Ava. She was still on the floor, still in that uniform, clutching her stuffed lion like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice breaking, "why didn't you tell me?" Ava's lip trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "She said you wouldn't believe me. She said you'd think I was lying because I didn't like her. She said you'd send me away." Robert's chest caved in. "She said," Ava's voice broke. "She said you'd be happier if I wasn't here." Robert dropped to his knees in front of his daughter. He reached for her, and this time she didn't flinch. She fell into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby." He looked up at Diane, the woman he'd married, the woman he'd trusted with his daughter. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "You're leaving tonight." Diane's face went pale. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." "Robert, you're making a mistake." "The mistake," he said, his voice cold, "was ever leaving her alone with you." Diane's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since he'd known her, she had no words. She turned and walked up the stairs. Her heels clicked against the wood, each step sharper than the last. Robert held his daughter tighter, and over Ava's shoulder he saw Jennifer, still standing there, still steady, still the person who'd protected his child when he hadn't. "Thank you," he whispered. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Because some things don't need words. The house felt different after Diane left. Quieter, but not peaceful, just empty. Robert sat in the kitchen with Ava curled up beside him on the counter stool. She was still wearing that uniform. He'd tried to help her take it off, but she'd pulled away. Not because she was angry, because she was scared to let go of Jennifer, who was standing by the sink making hot chocolate. Robert watched them. The way Jennifer moved around his daughter, careful, gentle, like she knew exactly what Ava needed without being told. She poured the hot chocolate into Ava's favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that Ava refused to throw away because her mother gave it to her. Robert hadn't remembered which mug that was, but Jennifer did. She set it down in front of Ava with a soft smile. "Careful, sweetheart. It's hot." Ava wrapped her small hands around the cup and whispered, "Thank you, Miss Jennifer." Jennifer brushed a strand of hair from Ava's face. A simple gesture, tender, familiar, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Robert's chest tightened. How many nights had his daughter needed someone to brush her hair back? How many times had she cried herself to sleep while he was on another continent? How many moments like this had he missed? "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said quietly, "would you like some coffee?" He shook his head. "No, thank you." The silence stretched. Jennifer started to excuse herself. "I should go. Let you two." "Stay." The word came out before Robert could stop it. "Please." Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. They sat together at the kitchen table, Ava between them, the three of them in a triangle of unspoken understanding. Robert didn't know what to say, didn't know how to thank someone for doing what he should have been doing all along. "How long?" he finally asked. His voice was rough, tired. Jennifer looked down at her hands. "About 3 months, after you left for Singapore." 3 months, a quarter of a year. His daughter had been suffering for 3 months, and he hadn't known. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening?" Jennifer's eyes met his. There was no judgment there, just sadness. "She threatened me, Mr. Scott. Said, if I told you, she'd make sure you didn't believe me. Said she'd tell you I was stealing, that I was the problem." She paused. "And honestly, I didn't know if you'd listen." The words cut deeper than she probably meant them to, because she was right. If she'd called him in the middle of a board meeting and told him his wife was abusing his daughter, would he have believed her? Would he have dropped everything and come home? Or would he have told her he'd handle it later? Robert looked at Ava. She'd fallen asleep against Jennifer's shoulder, the hot chocolate barely touched. Jennifer held her without thinking, one arm wrapped protectively around the child, the other hand resting gently on Ava's back. Like she'd held her before, like this was normal. "She trusts you," Robert said quietly. Jennifer looked down at Ava, her expression soft. "She shouldn't have had to. But she did, and you stayed." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "I couldn't leave her alone, Mr. Scott. I couldn't walk away knowing what would happen when no one was watching." Robert's throat closed. This woman, this stranger he'd hired and barely spoken to, had protected his daughter when he hadn't, had stood between Ava and cruelty, had chosen to kneel beside a child who wasn't hers rather than let her suffer alone. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. Jennifer shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Just be here." That's all she's ever wanted. Robert looked at his daughter sleeping in another woman's arms, and he realized something that broke him completely. He'd been so busy trying to give Ava everything. He'd forgotten to give her the one thing she actually needed. Him. Robert carried Ava upstairs while Jennifer followed quietly behind. They reached Ava's room, the one with the pale yellow walls her mother had painted before she died. The room still smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets tucked in the dresser drawers. Robert laid Ava down gently and pulled the blanket over her. She stirred slightly, reaching for something in her sleep. Jennifer moved past him without a word and placed the stuffed lion in Ava's arms. The little girl's fingers curled around it immediately, and she settled. Robert watched. Jennifer knew exactly where the lion went, knew which side of the bed Ava slept on, knew to leave the lamp on low because Ava was afraid of complete darkness. She knew his daughter better than he did. They stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked open just enough to let the light in. "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said softly, "there's something you should see." She led him downstairs to a small room off the kitchen, the one where the staff kept their things. Jennifer opened her locker and pulled out a worn notebook. The cover was bent, the pages creased from being opened and closed so many times. She handed it to him. "I've been writing down everything," she said quietly. "Every time she hurt Ava, every time she said something cruel, every time Ava cried herself to sleep. I didn't know what else to do." Robert opened the notebook. The first entry was dated 3 months ago. June 14th, Mrs. Scott told Ava she'd never be as pretty as her mother. Ava didn't eat dinner, found her crying in the bathroom. His hands started shaking. June 22nd, Ava wasn't allowed to leave her room all day because she laughed too loud at breakfast. Mrs. Scott said she was being disrespectful. July 8th, Mrs. Scott called Ava a mistake, said her father only keeps her around out of obligation. Robert's vision blurred. Page after page, entry after entry. Months of pain his daughter had endured while he was closing deals and chasing success. August 3rd, Ava asked if her daddy still loved her. I told her yes, but I don't think she believed me. Robert's knees buckled. He sat down hard on the bench by the wall, the notebook still open in his hands. Why didn't she tell me? His voice cracked. Why didn't she say something on our video calls? Jennifer sat beside him. She tried once. About a month ago. She started to tell you something, and Mrs. Scott walked into the room. After you hung up, Mrs. Scott told Ava that if she ever said anything again, you'd send her to boarding school, that you'd think she was lying to get attention. Robert's chest felt like it was caving in. She made Ava believe you didn't want to hear it, Jennifer continued, that you were too busy, too important, that complaining would just make you love her less. Robert buried his face in his hands. He'd failed her. Completely. Utterly. Failed her. I should have been here, he whispered. I should have seen it. Jennifer's hand rested gently on his shoulder. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it? Robert looked up at her, his eyes red. Is it enough, after everything she's been through? Jennifer's voice was steady, certain. She's been waiting for you to come home, Mr. Scott, not because she needed you to save her, but because she just wanted her dad. The words broke something inside him. All the money, all the success, all the deals and the power and the empire he'd built, none of it mattered, because the one person who needed him most had been suffering in silence, and he'd been too far away to hear her. Robert closed the notebook carefully, like it was something sacred. What do I do now? He asked. How do I fix this? Jennifer looked toward the stairs, toward Ava's room. You stay, you listen, you show her that you're not going anywhere. She paused. And you let her be angry, let her cry, let her tell you everything she's been holding inside, even if it hurts to hear. Robert nodded, wiping his eyes. He'd spent 6 months building something that would last. Now he had to rebuild something he'd almost destroyed. His daughter's trust. Robert didn't sleep that night. He sat in Ava's doorway, watching her breathe, watching her clutch that stuffed lion, watching for signs that she was safe, that she was really okay. But every time she shifted in her sleep, his heart jumped. Every small sound made him wonder if she was crying, if she was having nightmares about everything Diane had done. He'd called his lawyer at midnight, left a message about divorce papers, about restraining orders, about making sure Diane never came near his daughter again. But even as he said the words, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if it's too late? What if you've already lost her?" Morning came too fast. Robert was making breakfast when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find a woman in an expensive suit standing on his porch. Her expression was cold, professional. "Robert Scott?" "Yes." She handed him an envelope. "You've been served." His stomach dropped. He opened it right there. The words jumped off the page like knives. Emergency custody petition. Unstable home environment. Inappropriate relationship between employer and employee. Endangerment of minor child. Robert's hands shook. "What is this?" The woman's voice was flat. "Mrs. Scott is filing for custody of your daughter. She's citing concerns about the child's welfare and your relationship with the housemaid." The word hung in the air like poison. "There is no relationship," Robert said through clenched teeth. "Jennifer protected my daughter when my wife was abusing her. That will be for the court to decide." The woman turned to leave, then paused. "You should also know, Mrs. Scott has witnesses. Friends who will testify to your extended absences and to the closeness between you and Miss Gibson." She walked away before Robert could respond. He stood there, holding the papers, his mind racing. Diane was going to twist everything. She was going to make Jennifer look like a homewrecker, make him look like a negligent father, make Ava look like a pawn in some affair that didn't exist. And the worst part? Some of it was true. He had been absent. He had been negligent. He had left his daughter vulnerable. "Mr. Scott?" He turned. Jennifer stood in the hallway, her face pale. "I heard," she said quietly. "The doorbell woke me." Robert looked at the papers in his hand, then at Jennifer, this woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect his daughter. "She's coming after you too," he said. "She's going to try to destroy you." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Let her try." "Jennifer, you don't understand. She has money, lawyers, friends in high places. She's going to dig into your past. She's going to twist everything you've done into something ugly." "I know." Jennifer's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "But I'm not leaving, Ava. I don't care what she does to me." Robert stared at her. This woman, who owed him nothing, who could walk away right now and protect herself. But she wouldn't, because she loved his daughter, more than he'd shown he did. The thought hit him like a punch. "I can't ask you to do this," Robert said. "I can't let you sacrifice yourself." "You're not asking." Jennifer's eyes met his. "I'm choosing." Upstairs, a door opened. They both looked up to see Ava standing at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, holding her lion. Her voice was small, scared. "Is she coming back?" Robert's heart shattered, because his daughter wasn't asking if Diane was coming back. She was asking if the nightmare was starting again. He climbed the stairs and knelt in front of her. "No, baby. I promise you, she's not coming back." "But what if she takes me away?" Ava's eyes filled with tears. "What if the court says I have to go with her?" Robert pulled her into his arms. "That's not going to happen." But even as he said it, holding his daughter tight, he felt the weight of the papers in his hand, and he knew the battle had only just begun. Robert sat in his office that afternoon with the door closed. The custody papers were spread across his desk. Legal language, cold facts, a twisted version of his life written by Diane's lawyers. Father repeatedly absent for extended periods. Child left in care of household staff. Inappropriate emotional dependency between minor and employee. Every word felt like an accusation, because some of it was true. He had been gone. He had left Ava with people he barely knew. He had put his company before his daughter. And now someone else was paying the price. Jennifer. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." Jennifer stepped inside, her movements hesitant. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say, if you need me to leave, I understand." Robert looked up. "Leave? For the case?" Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. "If my being here makes things harder for you and Ava, I can go. I can find another job. Her voice caught. "I just want what's best for her." Robert stood. "You think leaving is what's best for her?" "I think losing her would destroy me," Jennifer said, her eyes filling with tears. "But I'd rather leave now than be the reason she gets taken from you." Robert walked around the desk. "You're not the reason. I am." Jennifer shook her head. "You were working, providing for her." "I was hiding." The words came out raw, honest. "After my wife died, I didn't know how to be a father without her. Didn't know how to look at Ava without seeing everything I'd lost. So I ran. I buried myself in work and told myself I was doing it for her. But I was just running from the pain." His voice broke. "And while I was running, my daughter was drowning. And you," he looked at Jennifer, "you were the only one who jumped in after her." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "She's a beautiful child, Mr. Scott. She deserves to be loved, not hurt." "I know." Robert's chest felt tight. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for the fact that I let her down." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Robert looked at the papers on his desk, at the lies, at the twisted truth. "We fight," he said. "We show the court exactly what happened. We show them who Diane really is. And we show them that Ava is safe here, with us." Jennifer nodded, but her hands were trembling. "She's going to come after me," she said quietly. "She's going to dig up everything from my past, things I'm not proud of, things I've tried to leave behind. Then we'll face it together." Robert's voice was firm. "Whatever she throws at us, we face it together." Jennifer looked up at him. Why are you doing this? Why are you risking everything for me? Because you risked everything for my daughter. Robert's eyes held hers. Because you did what I should have done. And because if I lose you, I lose the person who's been keeping Ava's heart beating. Footsteps in the hallway. They both turned to see Ava standing in the doorway. She'd changed out of the uniform finally. Now, she wore her favorite sweater, the yellow one her mother gave her. "Are you leaving, Miss Jennifer?" Her voice was small, scared. Jennifer knelt down immediately. "No, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Jennifer pulled Ava into her arms. "I promise." Ava buried her face in Jennifer's shoulder. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to lose you too." Robert watched them. His daughter, and the woman who'd saved her, and he made a decision right there. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would protect them both. Because family isn't just blood. It's the people who stay when everything falls apart. 3 weeks later, they sat in family court. The room was smaller than Robert expected, colder, the kind of place where lives were decided by strangers in suits. Diane sat across the aisle with her lawyer, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. She looked like the victim, like the woman who'd been wronged. Robert's lawyer, Martin Chen, leaned over and whispered, "Remember, stay calm, let the truth speak." But Robert's hands were shaking, because sitting beside him was Ava, wearing her yellow sweater, holding Jennifer's hand so tight her knuckles were white. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Judge Harrison. She looked at the papers in front of her, then at the people in her courtroom. "Let's begin." Diane's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a negligent father, a man who abandoned his daughter for months at a time, a household in chaos, an employee who overstepped boundaries and manipulated a vulnerable child. Robert listened to himself being torn apart. Then it was their turn. Martin stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence." He played the security footage. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, Diane grabbed Ava's arm, screamed at her, forced her into the uniform, watched with satisfaction as the child scrubbed the floor on her knees. Robert heard someone in the gallery gasp. Diane's face went pale. Then Martin called witnesses. Mrs. Delgado from Child Protective Services took the stand. "I've interviewed the child multiple times. She's bonded with Miss Gibson in a healthy, protective way. The abuse came from Mrs. Scott, not from neglect by the father or manipulation by the employee." Ava's teacher, Miss Brennan, was next. Ava was withdrawn all last year, anxious. She barely spoke in class. But in the last few weeks, since her father came home and Mrs. Scott left, she's completely changed. She's smiling again, participating. She told me that Miss Jennifer taught her she was worth loving. Robert's throat tightened. Then Dr. Raymond, the child psychologist. "This is a classic case of emotional abuse from a step-parent and a protective attachment formed with a caregiver. Jennifer Gibson provided what we call a protective factor. She quite literally may have saved this child's psychological well-being." Finally, Martin called Jennifer. She walked to the stand slowly, her hands folded. She looked small up there, vulnerable. Diane's lawyer stood. "Miss Gibson, isn't it true you have a criminal record?" Jennifer didn't flinch. "I was arrested when I was 16. I stole baby formula and diapers for my little sister because our mother was sick and we had no money. The charges were dropped after I completed community service. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school." The lawyer tried to twist it, make it sound worse than it was, but Jennifer's voice stayed steady. "I'm not ashamed of protecting my sister, just like I'm not ashamed of protecting Ava." "Did you develop feelings for Mr. Scott?" the lawyer pressed. "I developed love for a child who needed someone." Jennifer's eyes were clear. "That's all I've ever wanted, to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." Diane's lawyer sat down. Then Martin asked one question. "Miss Gibson, why did you stay?" Jennifer's voice broke slightly. "Because when you see a child suffering, you don't look away. You don't calculate the cost. You stay, even when it's hard. Even when no one's watching, you stay." The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison made a note. Then she looked up. "I'd like to speak with the child, in chambers." Robert's heart stopped. Ava stood, still holding Jennifer's hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jennifer whispered. "Just tell her the truth." Ava nodded and followed the judge through the side door. And Robert sat there, waiting, praying that his daughter's voice would finally be heard. Ava was in the judge's chambers for 20 minutes. To Robert, it felt like a lifetime. When the door finally opened, Ava walked out with red eyes but something else in her face, something lighter, like she'd finally been allowed to put down a weight she'd been carrying alone. Judge Harrison followed her out and took her seat. The courtroom held its breath. "I've made my decision," she said. Robert's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. "The petition for custody is denied." Diane's face crumbled. "The evidence is clear," Judge Harrison continued. "Mrs. Scott engaged in emotional and physical abuse of this child. Miss Gibson acted with courage and compassion in protecting her. Mr. Scott, while absent, has taken immediate and decisive action to ensure his daughter's safety." She looked directly at Robert. "Your daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs a present one. Be that man." Robert nodded, unable to speak. "As for Miss Gibson," the judge's voice softened, "you did what too few people have the courage to do. You saw a child in pain, and you refused to look away. That's not manipulation. That's love." Jennifer's tears finally fell. "A restraining order will be issued. Mrs. Scott is not to contact the child or come within 500 feet of the family home." Judge Harrison brought down her gavel. "This case is closed." The courtroom erupted in quiet relief. Robert turned to Ava and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, crying into his shoulder, not from sadness this time, but from something that felt like freedom. "I'm here, baby," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere ever again." 6 months later, Christmas morning. The house felt different now, warm, full of laughter that echoed off the walls and actually meant something. Robert sat on the floor by the tree with Ava, wrapping paper scattered everywhere. She was opening gifts with the kind of joy he'd forgotten children could have, pure, unguarded, real. Jennifer came in carrying mugs of hot chocolate, wearing comfortable clothes, not a uniform. Never a uniform again. Robert had made her Ava's legal guardian, given her a title that matched what she'd always been, family. "Miss Jennifer, look!" Ava held up a small ornament she'd made in art class, a tiny angel with words written on it in careful handwriting. "Family is who stays." Jennifer knelt beside her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put it on the tree?" Of course. They hung it together, right in the front, where everyone could see. Robert watched them. His daughter, and the woman who'd saved her. The doorbell rang. Robert's parents arrived, arms full of gifts and warmth. His mother hugged Jennifer like she was her own daughter. "Thank you," she whispered to Jennifer. "Thank you for loving her when we didn't know she needed it." They gathered around the table for dinner. The long table that used to feel cold and empty now felt full, alive. Robert stood, raising his glass. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything, he said. Money, success, power, but I was empty. I'd lost sight of what actually mattered. He looked at Ava. My daughter showed me what courage looks like. She survived something no child should have to face. Then, at Jennifer. And this woman, she showed me what love really means. Not words, not promises, but showing up, staying, protecting someone else's child like she was your own. His voice broke. I don't deserve either of you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Ava climbed into Robert's lap and whispered, I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby, so much. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Robert stood in Ava's doorway watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, safe, like a child should look. Jennifer appeared beside him, her voice soft. She's going to be okay. Because of you, Robert said. Because of all of us, Jennifer corrected. Because you came home. Because you chose to see. Because you fought for her. Robert looked at Jennifer, really looked at her, this woman who'd asked for nothing but had given everything. I don't know what we'd do without you, he said quietly. Jennifer smiled. You'll never have to find out. They stood there together, in the quiet, and Robert thought about how wrong he'd been about everything. Success wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in moments like this, in bedtime stories, and hot chocolate, and showing up, even when it's hard. Family wasn't just biology. It was choice. It was the people who stayed when everyone else walked away. And love, real love, wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was kneeling beside a frightened child and whispering, "You're not alone." It was coming home. It was staying. It was being present even when you'd failed before. Robert looked at the ornament on the tree downstairs, glowing softly in the light. Family is who stays. And for the first time in years, he finally understood what that meant. 3 years after the woman he loved tried to kill his mother, Justin Miller received a letter from prison, and the words inside shattered everything he thought he knew about that day. He almost didn't open it. The envelope sat on Justin's kitchen counter for 2 days, postmarked from Cedar Junction, Audrey's name in the corner. He walked past it every morning, every evening, pretending it wasn't there. 3 years had passed since that hospital room. 3 years since he'd watched them take her away in handcuffs. 3 years of rebuilding a life he thought he understood. Michelle was strong now, healthy, back in her own place. And Justin, for the first time since that day, had started to let someone in again. Sarah, a therapist he'd met through his grief counselor. Kind, patient, real in ways Audrey never was. But the letter changed everything. Justin finally opened it Thursday night, alone, the city glowing below his window. 3 handwritten pages. Audrey's voice, raw and desperate in ways he'd never heard before. And buried in the middle of her apology, one sentence that stopped his heart. "Your mother wasn't just sick, Justin. She was being poisoned." The pages slipped from his hands. Because if Audrey was telling the truth, if any of this was real, then someone else had tried to kill his mother first. Someone who was still out there. Someone who might try again. But before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes the truth we think we know is only the beginning. Justin called Detective Ramirez at 7 in the morning. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "Miller, what's wrong?" "Audrey sent me a letter. She's claiming my mother was poisoned before the incident, that she found a vial of digoxin in Michelle's hospital room." Silence. "Detective, I'm coming to you. Don't touch the letter again." She arrived within the hour, jeans, sweatshirt, badge on her belt. Justin handed her the letter, sealed now in a plastic bag. Detective Ramirez read it slowly. When she finished, she looked up. "You believe her?" "I don't know." She set the letter down. "We ran a full tox screen 3 years ago. Came back clean. But if someone stopped before she was hospitalized, digoxin clears the system in about 36 hours. Ramirez leaned back, thinking. If they timed it right, we'd never find it. Justin's chest tightened. "It's also possible," Ramirez continued, her voice careful, "that Audrey's building a parole defense, manufacturing doubt, making herself look like a victim instead of an attempted murderer." "I know, but you're not sure." Justin shook his head. "I was sure about her 3 years ago. I was wrong about everything." Ramirez studied him. "I'll look into it. Pull hospital records, interview staff. But don't tell your mother yet, not until we know more." After she left, Justin sat in the silence of his apartment, staring at nothing. If someone had poisoned Michelle, if someone wanted her dead badly enough to be patient, careful, calculated, then saving her once wasn't enough. They might come back, and this time he might not see it coming. That night, Sarah noticed immediately. They were at dinner, their usual place, quiet corner table, candles between them. She'd been talking about her day, but Justin couldn't focus. "You're not here," she said gently. He looked up. Sarah's eyes were warm but direct. They'd built something honest together over 8 months. She deserved the truth. "I got a letter from Audrey." Sarah's expression didn't change, but her hand stilled on her wineglass. "What did it say?" He told her. The poisoning claim, the vial, Detective Ramirez, and underneath it all, the fear that maybe he'd been wrong, that maybe Audrey had been drowning instead of calculating. Sarah was quiet when he finished. Then, "What do you think?" "I don't know what to think anymore." "Do you think she's lying?" "Maybe. Probably." Justin's voice cracked. "But what if she's not?" Sarah reached across the table, her hand covering his. "Justin, even if she was broken, even if she was in crisis, what she did was still a choice. Mental illness, doesn't erase that. And whatever else is true, you saved your mother's life that day. He wanted to believe her. But there's something else, Sarah said, her voice dropping. If someone really did poison Michelle, they're still out there. The words hung between them. Justin had spent 3 years trying to move forward, trying to heal, trying to trust again. And now the past was rising up, pulling him back into a nightmare he thought was over. His phone buzzed. "Detective Ramirez," he answered. "Did you find something?" "I pulled the hospital records." Her voice was tight. "Justin, there were 3 visitors logged for your mother the week before the incident. You, Audrey, and someone who signed in as A. Miller." Justin's blood went cold. "I don't have any siblings." "I know. Who was it? That's what I need to figure out." "But Justin," Ramirez paused, "whoever they were, they visited your mother alone, 3 times, and the nurses don't remember them." Justin's hands started shaking. Someone had gotten to his mother, someone who used a fake name, someone who disappeared before anyone thought to look. Sarah was watching him, her face pale. "There's more," Ramirez said. "I talked to the hospital pharmacist. A vial of digoxin went missing from their supply 2 weeks before your mother was admitted. They wrote it off as a clerical error." Justin couldn't breathe. "This wasn't random," Ramirez continued. "This was planned, careful. And if Audrey's telling the truth about finding that vial, if she really did stumble into someone else's crime, then we need to figure out who A. Miller is, fast." Justin ended the call, his mind racing. Someone had tried to kill his mother 3 years ago. Someone, patient, methodical, invisible, and they were still out there, watching, waiting, maybe planning to finish what they started. Justin told his mother the next morning. He'd promised Detective Ramirez he'd wait, but sitting across from Michelle at breakfast watching her butter her toast, humming softly to herself, he couldn't keep it from her. "Mom, we need to talk." Something in his voice made her set down her knife. "What happened?" He told her about the letter, about the digoxin, about someone signing into the hospital as A. Miller and visiting her 3 times. Michelle's face went pale. "Do you remember anyone unusual visiting you that week?" Justin asked. "Anyone who seemed off?" She was quiet for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly around her coffee mug. "I was so sick, sweetheart. There were so many nurses, so many faces. I barely remember anything clearly." "Try, Mom, please." Michelle closed her eyes, reaching back. There was a woman, I think. She came in one afternoon when you were at work. Said she was from patient services, checking on my comfort level." "What did she look like?" "Older, maybe 60, short grey hair, kind smile." Michelle's eyes opened. "She asked me questions about my medications, about my care. I thought she was just being thorough." Justin's stomach dropped. "Did she touch anything? Your IV? Your medication?" "I don't," Michelle's voice cracked. "I don't remember." "Justin, what if she—" "Don't." He reached across the table, gripping her hand. "Don't go there yet. We don't know anything for sure." But they both knew. Someone had walked into that hospital room, smiled kindly at a sick woman, and poisoned her. That afternoon, Justin sat in his office, staring at 3 years of financial records spread across his desk. If someone wanted Michelle dead, there had to be a reason. Money, business, revenge. He started with his company's competitors, executives he'd undercut, deals that went south, partnerships that ended badly. Nothing stood out. Then he looked at personal enemies, ex-girlfriends before Audrey, business associates who felt cheated, people he'd fired over the years. Still nothing. His phone rang. "Sarah." "Hey," he answered, his voice flat. "How's Michelle?" "Scared, trying not to show it." Sarah was quiet. "And you?" Justin leaned back, pressing his palms against his eyes. "I don't know how to protect her from someone I can't see." "You're not alone in this. You know that, right?" He wanted to believe her. But 3 years ago, he'd trusted Audrey to sit with his mother. He'd trusted his own judgment. And he'd been catastrophically wrong. "Justin, listen to me." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "Whatever's happening, you didn't cause it. You're not responsible for other people's evil. Then why does it keep finding us?" She didn't have an answer for that. Detective Ramirez called an hour later. "I got the security footage from the hospital. 3 years old, but it's something." "And?" The woman who signed in as A. Miller kept her head down every time she passed a camera, like she knew where they were. But I got one partial shot, enough to run facial recognition. Justin held his breath. Nothing came up. Whoever she is, she's not in the system. No criminal record, no driver's license match. Nothing. So we're back to nothing. Not nothing. I'm working a theory. Ramirez paused. Justin, is there anyone in your mother's life, past or present, who might benefit from her death? Old friends, distant family, anyone with a grudge? My mother doesn't have enemies. She's the kindest person I know. Sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes people want things that someone else is standing in the way of. Justin's mind went blank. His mother had nothing, no wealth of her own. No property except the house he'd bought her. No connections to powerful people. Unless... His breath caught. What? Ramirez asked. You thought of something. My father, Justin said slowly. He left when I was 7, walked out on us. Mom never asked him for anything, no child support, no alimony, nothing. She just let him go. You think he'd come back after 40 years to kill her? I don't know. But Mom inherited her father's estate when he passed away 5 years ago. It wasn't much, maybe 200,000. But she never told anyone about it except me. Where's your father now? I have no idea. Haven't spoken to him since I was a kid. Ramirez was quiet. Then, I'll find him. After she hung up, Justin sat in the silence of his office, a chill running down his spine. His father, a man who'd abandoned them without looking back. Could he really come back decades later to take the one thing Michelle had left? And if he could, what else was he capable of? Detective Ramirez found him in 48 hours. Marcus Miller, age 72. Living in a suburb outside Philadelphia under his own name, working part-time at a hardware store. He's been there for 6 years, Ramirez said over the phone. Quiet life, no criminal record, pays his taxes. Justin gripped his phone tighter. Did you talk to him? Not yet. I wanted to ask you first, do you want to be there when I do? Every cell in Justin's body screamed, no. But he heard himself say, yes. He didn't tell Michelle where he was going. Just kissed her forehead that morning and said he had meetings in Philadelphia. She smiled, told him to drive safe, and went back to her crossword puzzle. The lie tasted bitter. Justin drove 3 hours in silence, his mind spinning. The last time he'd seen his father, he was 7 years old, watching through the living room window as Marcus loaded a suitcase into his car and drove away without looking back. Michelle had cried for weeks. Justin never did. He'd just gone quiet, turned all that abandonment into fuel, studied harder, worked longer, built an empire to prove he didn't need the man who left. And now, 40 years later, he was about to face him. The hardware store was small, tucked between a laundromat and a diner. Detective Ramirez was waiting in the parking lot when Justin arrived. You ready? She asked. Justin nodded, though he wasn't sure that was true. Inside, the store smelled like sawdust and paint. An older man stood behind the counter, ringing up a customer. Grey hair, reading glasses, flannel shirt. Justin's breath stopped. It was him, older, smaller somehow, but unmistakably the man who'd walked out of their lives. The customer left. Marcus looked up, ready to greet the next person. His eyes met Justin's, and something in his face crumbled. Justin? The sound of his name in his father's voice felt like a punch. Detective Ramirez stepped forward, showing her badge. Mr. Miller, I'm Detective Ramirez. I need to ask you some questions about your ex-wife, Michelle. Marcus's face went pale. Is she okay? That's what we're trying to determine. Ramirez's voice was measured. Can you tell me where you were 3 years ago? Specifically, in April? 3 years ago. Marcus looked between them, confused. I don't why. Just answer the question. I was here, working. I've been here for 6 years. I haven't left Philadelphia. Have you had any contact with Michelle Miller during that time? No, none. I haven't spoken to her in 40 years. Justin's voice came out cold. Why would you? Marcus flinched. Justin, Did you know she inherited money? Justin cut him off. From her father, 5 years ago. Marcus's face shifted genuine surprise. No, I didn't know that. You expect us to believe you just happened to stay away all these years? Never once thought about coming back for a piece of what she had? I didn't know she had anything. Marcus's voice cracked. And I left because I was a coward, Not a thief. Then why did you leave? The question hung in the air. Marcus looked down at his hands. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I was drowning. Your mother was so strong, so capable, and I felt useless next to her. Every day, I felt smaller. And instead of being a man about it, instead of working through it, I ran. Justin's jaw clenched. I've regretted it every day since, Marcus continued. I thought about reaching out 1,000 times. But what was I supposed to say? Sorry, I abandoned you both. Sorry, I was too weak to stay. That would have been a start. Marcus looked up, tears in his eyes. I know. And I'm sorry, Justin. I'm so sorry. But I swear to you, I didn't hurt Michelle. I wouldn't. I loved her once. His voice broke. I still think about her. Wonder if she's okay. Detective Ramirez watched him carefully. Can anyone verify your whereabouts 3 years ago? My boss. My landlord. I haven't missed a day of work in 6 years. Ramirez nodded. I'll need their information. She stepped outside to make calls, leaving Justin alone with his father. The silence stretched between them, 40 years of it, thick and suffocating. You look just like her, Marcus finally said. Your mother. You have her eyes. Justin didn't respond. I heard you did well for yourself. Built something big. No, thanks to you. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. Everything you are, you got from her, not me. Justin turned to leave. Wait, Marcus's voice stopped him. If someone hurt Michelle, if she's in danger, please protect her. She deserves that. She always did. Justin looked back at the broken man behind the counter, and for the first time, he didn't see a villain. Just a coward who'd spent 40 years living with his shame. Outside, Ramirez was ending a call. She looked at Justin. His alibi checks out. He was working the day those hospital visits happened, time-stamped employee records. Justin exhaled slowly. It's not him, Ramirez said, which meant the woman with grey hair, the one who'd smiled kindly at Michelle and poisoned her, was still a ghost. Still out there. Still hunting. Justin drove back in silence. His father's face burned into his mind. Not the villain he'd imagined for 40 years. Just a weak man who'd run from his own shame and never found the courage to come back. It didn't make Justin forgive him, but it made him human. Sarah was waiting at his apartment when he got home. She'd let herself in with the key he'd given her 2 months ago, a decision that had terrified him at the time. How'd it go? She asked, setting down her book. Justin collapsed onto the couch beside her. It wasn't him. She didn't say anything, just took his hand and waited. He's just broken, Justin finally said. Spent 40 years working at a hardware store, living alone, carrying the weight of what he did. And I wanted him to be the villain so badly. I wanted it to be simple. It never is. Justin leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. If it's not him, then who? Who would want my mother dead? Sarah shifted, tucking her legs beneath her. What if it's not about your mother at all? He looked at her. What do you mean? What if she's just in the way of something? Or someone? The thought had crossed Justin's mind, but hearing Sarah say it out loud made it real. You inherited everything when your grandfather died, right? Sarah continued carefully. The estate went to Michelle first, then eventually to you. Yeah, but it wasn't much. A couple 100,000. Some land upstate she's never done anything with. Land? 40 acres. Woods mostly. My grandfather used to hunt there. Sarah's expression shifted. Justin, have you checked what that land is worth now? He hadn't. 2 hours later, they sat at Justin's laptop. Property records spread across the screen. The land Michelle inherited wasn't just woods anymore. A development company had been buying up surrounding parcels for the past 3 years, paying premium prices, big money. The kind that turned quiet forest into luxury estates. And Michelle's 40 acres sat right in the middle. They can't develop without her land, Sarah said quietly. She's blocking the entire project. Justin's chest tightened. Has anyone approached her about selling? I don't know. Has she mentioned anything? He called Michelle immediately. She answered on the second ring. Justin, it's almost midnight. Mom, the land upstate. Has anyone tried to buy it from you? Silence. Mom, there was a woman, Michelle said slowly. About 4 years ago. She came by the house. Said she represented a development firm, made a very generous offer. What did you tell her? I said no. That land was your grandfather's. It felt wrong to sell it. What did she look like? I don't. Older, I think. Grey hair. Very polite. Justin's blood went cold. Mum, did she come back? After you said no? Once or twice. The last time was. Michelle paused. Right before I got sick. She called. Said the offer was still open. I told her I wasn't interested. And then you ended up in the hospital. The silence on the other end was deafening. Justin, you don't think. I think you need to stay with me for a while. Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you. Justin, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. An hour later, Michelle was in his guest room, the door locked, security system armed. Sarah had stayed, refusing to leave them alone. She made tea while Justin called Detective Ramirez, explaining what they'd found. I'll pull records on the development company first thing tomorrow, Ramirez said. Get names, financials, see who's behind it. When Justin hung up, his hands were shaking. Sarah handed him tea. She's safe now. Is she? Justin set the cup down without drinking. Someone poisoned her, Sarah. Came into her hospital room 3 times and poisoned her. They didn't care that she was sick. Didn't care that she almost died. But she didn't die. You saved her. And now what? We wait for them to try again? Sarah sat beside him. No. Now you let Detective Ramirez do her job. You keep Michelle close, and you stop carrying this alone. Justin looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his shattered life 8 months ago and stayed when most people would have run. Why are you still here? He asked quietly. What? You know what my life is. The mess, the danger, the woman in prison who tried to kill my mother. Why haven't you left? Sarah's eyes softened. Because I see you, Justin. Not your money, not your success, not even your trauma. Just you. And you're worth staying for. Something in his chest cracked open. He pulled her close, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath him. I'm terrified I'll lose you too, he whispered. You won't. You can't promise that. No, Sarah said softly. But I can promise I won't leave by choice. Whatever comes, we face it together. Justin wanted to believe her, but he'd believed Audrey once too, and that belief had almost cost him everything. Detective Ramirez showed up at 8 in the morning with a file folder and a grim expression. Michelle was still sleeping. Sarah had left an hour earlier for work, making Justin promise to call if anything happened. Tell me you found something, Justin said, pouring coffee. Ramirez opened the folder. The development company is called Pinnacle Ridge Holdings, registered in Delaware, which makes tracking ownership complicated. But I dug deeper. She slid a document across the table. The CEO is a woman named Helen Vance, 63 years old, grey hair. Fits your mother's description of the woman who approached her about the land. Justin stared at the photo clipped to the page. Professional headshot. Kind smile. The face of someone you'd trust. She's got a clean record, Ramirez continued. No arrests. Successful career in real estate development. On the surface, she's legitimate. But 3 years ago, Pinnacle Ridge was hemorrhaging money. They'd bought up all the surrounding land for this development project, took out massive loans, and your mother's 40 acres was the last piece they needed. Without it, the whole project dies. They default on loans worth $30 million. Justin's stomach turned. So, she had motive. Strong motive. Ramirez pulled out another page. I compared the hospital sign-in records with Helen's known whereabouts. She was in the city the week your mother was poisoned. Stayed at a hotel 2 miles from the hospital. That's not enough to arrest her. No, it's not. Ramirez leaned forward. But Justin, there's something else. I pulled Helen's financial records. 2 days after your mother was hospitalized, Helen withdrew $15,000 in cash. No record of what it was for. You think she paid someone? I think she paid Audrey. Justin's chest went hollow. What? Think about it. Audrey was drowning in debt. Desperate. Helen knew about your relationship easy enough to find out. What if Helen approached Audrey, offered her money to finish what the poison hadn't? The room tilted. Audrey's letter said she found a vial of digoxin in your mother's room, Ramirez continued. What if that wasn't an accident? What if Helen left it there deliberately, made sure Audrey would find it? Justin could barely breathe. You're saying Helen manipulated Audrey into trying to kill my mother? I'm saying it's possible. Audrey was unstable, broke, terrified of losing you. Helen could have planted the idea. made it seem like mercy instead of murder. Justin stood, pacing. His mind was racing. If this was true, if Helen had poisoned his mother and then manipulated Audrey into finishing the job, then everything he thought he knew was wrong. Audrey wasn't the villain. She was a weapon someone else had used. "I need to talk to her," Justin said. "To who? Helen?" "To Audrey." Ramirez's eyes widened. "Justin, if Helen approached her, if any of this is real, Audrey would know. She'd remember. She's in prison. And even if you could see her, why would she tell you the truth? Because she has nothing left to lose." Justin grabbed his jacket. "And because 3 years ago, I didn't listen when she tried to explain. Maybe I should have." The prison was 2 hours north. Justin drove alone, his hands tight on the wheel, his mind spinning through every conversation he'd had with Audrey before that day. Had there been signs? Moments where she seemed scared instead of calculating? He'd been so sure she was a monster. But what if she'd just been desperate, used by someone smarter, colder, more patient? The visitation room was stark, white walls, metal tables, guards stationed at every corner, and then she walked in. Audrey looked different, thinner, hair shorter. No makeup. Prison had stripped away every polished layer she'd hidden behind. She stopped when she saw him, her eyes filling with tears. "Justin." He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat slowly, like she couldn't believe this was real. "I got your letter," Justin said. "I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either." He leaned forward. "Tell me about Helen Vance." Audrey's face went pale. "You know who I'm talking about?" "Yes." "Did she pay you?" Audrey's hands trembled on the table. "Not directly." "What does that mean?" She closed her eyes. 2 weeks before what happened, a woman came to my apartment, said she'd heard I was in financial trouble, offered to help. Helen. She didn't give her name. She knew everything, Justin. How much debt I had, that I was about to lose my apartment, that your mother didn't approve of our engagement." Justin's fists clenched. "She said your mother was suffering, that the pneumonia was worse than anyone knew, that maybe it would be kinder to let her go peacefully." Audrey's voice cracked. "She made it sound like mercy." "Did she give you money?" $10,000. Cash. Said it was to help me get back on my feet, to give us a fresh start after." She couldn't finish. Justin felt sick. "I didn't know what she meant at first. Not really. But then I found that vial in your mother's room, and something in my head just broke. I thought she was dying anyway. I thought I was helping. You were killing her." "I know." Tears streamed down Audrey's face. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing that. But Justin, I didn't plan it. I was manipulated, used. That doesn't make it okay." "I know." They sat in silence. Finally, Justin asked, "Will you testify? Against Helen?" Audrey looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "If it means stopping her, yes." Detective Ramirez moved fast. Within 24 hours, she had a warrant to search Helen Vance's office, bank records, email correspondence, anything that could link her to Michelle's poisoning. Justin waited at home with his mother, watching the clock. Michelle was quieter than usual. She sat by the window, staring out at the city, her coffee growing cold in her hands. "Talk to me," Justin said. She turned, and he saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Fear, yes, but also something deeper, sadness. "I keep thinking about that woman," Michelle said softly. "Helen. She came to my house, smiled at me, complimented my garden, and the whole time she was calculating how to kill me." Justin moved to sit beside her. "She's going to pay for what she did." "Will she?" "Women like that always find a way out." Michelle's voice was tired. "They hire good lawyers, blame other people, walk away clean while everyone else suffers. Not this time." Michelle looked at him. "You sound so sure." "Because I am. I won't let her get away with this." She reached for his hand. 3 years ago, you saved my life by acting on instinct. But Justin, sometimes justice takes more than instinct. Sometimes it takes patience you don't have." He knew what she meant. Every cell in his body wanted to drive to Helen's office, confront her, force a confession. But that wasn't how this worked. Evidence, process, the law. It felt too slow. The call came at noon. Detective Ramirez, her voice tight with controlled fury. "We've got a problem." Justin's stomach dropped. What happened? Helen's lawyer showed up with a cease and desist. Claims we're harassing his client, threatening her business. He's blocking the search warrant. He can't do that. He can tie it up in court for weeks, maybe months. Ramirez exhaled slowly. And that's not all. Helen just filed a defamation lawsuit against you. Claims you're spreading false accusations that are damaging her reputation. Justin's hand tightened on the phone. She's trying to intimidate us. She's succeeding. Her lawyer is Thomas Garrett, best defense attorney in the state. If this goes to trial, it's going to get ugly. I don't care. Justin, listen to me. Women like Helen don't play fair. She's got money, connections, and a legal team that will shred anyone who gets in her way. If we're going to take her down, we need to be smarter than her. How? We make her think she's winning. We back off publicly, let her lawyers celebrate their victory, and we build the case quietly where she can't see it. Justin hated it, but he trusted Ramirez. Okay, what do you need from me? Keep your mother safe. Stay visible. Act like you've given up. Ramirez paused. And whatever you do, don't contact Helen directly. That's exactly what she wants. That night, Sarah found Justin on the terrace, staring at the city lights. Michelle's asleep, she said, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Finally. Justin didn't respond. Sarah moved closer. You're thinking about going after her yourself? No. Justin. He turned to face her. What if Ramirez is wrong? What if backing off gives Helen time to disappear, to cover her tracks? Then you trust that the detective knows what she's doing. I trusted Audrey. Look how that turned out. Sarah's expression softened. This isn't the same thing, isn't it? I'm supposed to just sit here while the woman who poisoned my mother walks free. You're supposed to let the people who know how to catch her do their job. Sarah stepped closer. Justin, you can't control everything. You can't save everyone by sheer force of will. Sometimes you have to trust the process. The process is too slow. The process is all we have. He wanted to argue. But looking at Sarah steady, patient, refusing to let him spiral, he felt something shift. 3 years ago, he would have charged in, alone. Made demands, forced confrontation. But that version of himself had almost gotten his mother killed. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe trust wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the only way forward. The text came at 3 in the morning. Unknown number. 5 words that made Justin's blood run cold. Stop digging, or she dies. Attached was a photo. Michelle, asleep in his guest room, taken through the window. Someone had been watching them. Someone was inside his building. Justin's hands shook as he dialed 911, but deep down, he already knew. Helen wasn't backing down. She was escalating, and this time, she wasn't going to miss. Police arrived within minutes. 4 officers swept the building, checked every floor, every stairwell, found nothing. Detective Ramirez showed up 20 minutes later, still in sweatpants, her badge clipped over a Georgetown hoodie. She studied the photo on Justin's phone, her jaw tight. Professional, she said. Telephoto lens, taken from the building across the street. Justin looked out the window. Dozens of apartments faced his, hundreds of windows, impossible to know which one. She's hired someone, Ramirez continued. Someone good. Michelle emerged from the guest room, wrapped in Justin's robe, her face pale. What's happening? You're leaving, Justin said. Both of you, right now. Sarah appeared behind Michelle, already dressed. Where are we going? Somewhere Helen can't find you. Within an hour, they were packed. Justin drove them to a hotel 40 miles outside the city, small, quiet, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. He registered under Sarah's name, paid cash, and got them a room on the 3rd floor with no windows facing the street. Stay here, he told them. Don't leave. Don't call anyone. I'll check in every few hours. Michelle gripped his arm. What are you going to do? End this. Justin. Mom, she took a picture of you sleeping, through my window, in my home. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. I'm not waiting for her next move. Sarah pulled him aside. Don't do anything stupid. I won't. Promise me. He looked at her, this woman who'd chosen to stand beside him through all of this, who could have walked away a dozen times but stayed. I promise. He kissed her forehead and left before she could see him cry. Back at his apartment, Justin and Detective Ramirez sat in the dark. We need to draw her out, Ramirez said. How? Give her what she wants. The land. Justin's head snapped up. You want me to sell? I want you to pretend to sell. Set up a meeting. Get her on record, admitting what she did. She'll never confess. Not to you, but maybe to someone she thinks she's won. Ramirez leaned forward. We wire you. You offer the land. Act defeated. Let her gloat. People like Helen can't resist. Justin thought about it. The risk, the chance it could go wrong. But what choice did he have? Set it up. The call came the next morning. Helen Vance's assistant, professional, courteous, scheduling a meeting to discuss the property matter. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Helen's office. Justin agreed. When he hung up, his hands were steady for the first time in days. He called Michelle. How are you holding up? Scared, but okay. Her voice was small. Sarah's taking good care of me. Good. Stay there. This ends tomorrow. Justin, be careful. Please. I will. But they both knew careful wasn't always enough. That night, Justin couldn't sleep. He stood on his terrace, remembering the last time his world had shattered. 3 years ago, hospital room, pillow, the moment everything changed. He'd been so certain then that Audrey was the enemy. He'd been wrong, and now he was about to face the real enemy, a woman who'd poisoned his mother, manipulated a desperate girl into attempted murder, and threatened them from the shadows. A woman who thought money and lawyers made her untouchable. His phone buzzed. Sarah, I know you're not sleeping. I know you're scared, but you're not alone. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face what comes after together. Justin read it 3 times, then typed back, I love you. 3 words he hadn't said to anyone since Audrey. 3 words that terrified him more than any threat. Sarah's response came immediately. I love you too. Now get some rest. You're going to need it. Justin smiled, despite everything. Tomorrow, he'd walk into Helen Vance's office, wearing a wire. Tomorrow, he'd get the confession that would put her away. Tomorrow, he'd finally protect the people he loved. Or die trying. Detective Ramirez taped the wire to Justin's chest at 1:30. It's voice-activated, she said, adjusting the small device. Just act natural. Get her talking about the land, about your mother. If she mentions the poisoning, even indirectly, we've got her. Justin buttoned his shirt. What if she knows? Then we abort. But Helen's arrogant. She thinks she's already won. 2 unmarked cars would be parked outside Helen's building. Ramirez would be monitoring from across the street. If anything went wrong, they'd move in. You ready? She asked. Justin nodded, though his heart was hammering. Pinnacle Ridge Holdings occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower in the financial district. Justin stepped off the elevator into a lobby that screamed money. Marble floors, modern art. A receptionist with a practiced smile. Justin Miller, for Miss Vance. She's expecting you. Conference room 2. He followed her down a corridor, his pulse loud in his ears. The conference room overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20, and at the head of it, Helen Vance. She stood when he entered, grey hair perfectly styled, tailored suit, that same kind smile Michelle had described. Mr. Miller, thank you for coming. Her handshake was firm, confident. They sat. I understand you're ready to discuss the property, Helen said, folding her hands on the table. I am. I'm glad. I know this hasn't been easy. Your mother was quite attached to that land. She was. Helen's smile widened. Was? Justin forced himself to stay calm. She's reconsidering. Recent events have made her realize it's not worth the trouble. Recent events? The stress. Her health hasn't been good. Helen tilted her head, studying him. I heard she was ill a few years ago. Pneumonia, wasn't it? Yes. Terrible thing. My mother died of pneumonia. Helen's voice was sympathetic, but her eyes were cold. Sometimes the body just gives up fighting. Justin's jaw clenched. My mother's stronger than that. Of course. Helen opened a folder. I'm prepared to offer $5 million for the 40 acres, well above market value. Your mother would be very comfortable. That's generous. I believe in fair deals, Mr. Miller. Everyone should benefit. Justin leaned forward. Even if it means people get hurt along the way? Helen's smile didn't waver. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean the woman who visited my mother in the hospital 3 years ago. The one who signed in as a... Miller. The temperature in the room dropped. Helen set down her pen. That's a serious accusation. Is it an accusation if it's true? I think you're confused. Grief can do that. Make us see patterns that aren't there. Someone poisoned my mother. Someone tried to suffocate her. Your fiancée, if I remember correctly. She's in prison for it. Because you paid her. Helen laughed light, dismissive. Mr. Miller, I understand you're protective of your mother, but you're grasping at straws. I'm a businesswoman. I make deals. I don't commit crimes. Then you won't mind the police investigating. They already did. Found nothing. Helen stood. Now, if you're not here to discuss the land seriously, I think we're done. Justin stayed seated. You made one mistake. Oh? Audrey kept the cash you gave her, $10,000, sequential bills, and she's willing to testify where it came from. Helen's face went still. The police are pulling your bank records right now, Justin continued. They'll match the withdrawal, and once they do, everything unravels. The poison, the hospital visits, all of it. Helen walked to the window, her back to him. When she spoke, her voice was different, colder. Your mother's land is the last piece of a $100 million project. I've invested everything, loans I can't repay without it, my entire life's work. So you tried to kill her? I tried to solve a problem. Helen turned, and the mask was gone. She was old, sick. What was a few more months? A year? I was simply accelerating the inevitable. Justin's blood ran cold. But she didn't die, Helen continued. And that girl Audrey, she was supposed to finish it quietly. Instead, she panicked, made a scene, got herself arrested. You manipulated her. I gave her an opportunity. She took it. Helen's eyes were ice. Just like you're taking this opportunity right now. $5 million, Justin. Your mother lives comfortably. I get my land. Everyone wins. Except you go to prison. Helen smiled. You think you've won because you're wearing a wire? I've had this room swept for surveillance every morning for 3 years. That device under your shirt stopped transmitting the moment you walked in. Justin's heart stopped. My security is thorough, Helen said softly. They jammed the signal. Everything you think you recorded? Static. She moved toward the door. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to sell me that land, and you're going to keep your mouth shut. Because if you don't, if you continue this crusade, I'll finish what I started. Your mother, that girlfriend of yours, anyone you care about. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. Helen opened the door. You have 48 hours. After that, I stop being patient. She walked out. Justin sat frozen, his mind racing. The wire was dead. No confession, no evidence. Just a threat he couldn't prove. Justin walked out of that building with his hands shaking and his mind clear. Detective Ramirez was waiting in the surveillance van, her face grim. The wire went dead the second you walked in. She jammed it. I know. Justin, I'm sorry. We've got nothing. He pulled out his phone. Actually, we do. Ramirez looked at him. You told me to act natural, Justin said. So I brought my phone, left it recording in my pocket the whole time. He played it back. Helen's voice, crystal clear. I tried to solve a problem. She was old, sick. I was simply accelerating the inevitable. And then, that girl Audrey, she was supposed to finish it, quietly. Ramirez's eyes widened. You got her. Every word. Within an hour, patrol cars surrounded Pinnacle Ridge Holdings. Helen Vance was arrested in her office, her lawyer already on the phone, her face pale with fury. This is entrapment, she screamed as they cuffed her. You'll never make this stick. But Justin knew they would, because Helen's arrogance had made her careless, and carelessness left trails. 3 months later, Helen Vance pled guilty to attempted murder, conspiracy, and witness tampering. 25 years, no parole. Audrey's sentence was reduced to 4 years, with time served. She'd cooperate fully, testify against Helen, and get the psychiatric help she should have received from the beginning. Justin visited her one last time before she was transferred to a minimum security facility. Thank you, Audrey said quietly, for believing me. Finally, I should have listened 3 years ago. You weren't ready. Neither was I. She paused. I heard you're getting married. Justin nodded. Sarah had said yes 2 weeks ago. Small ceremony. Just family. She's lucky, Audrey said. I'm the lucky one. Take care of your mum, Justin. She's a good woman. I wish I'd seen that sooner. They said goodbye. Not with forgiveness exactly, but with something like understanding. Sometimes broken people do terrible things, and sometimes terrible things lead to healing no one expected. The wedding was in Michelle's garden. 20 people, evening light. Sarah in a simple white dress that made Justin's breath catch. Michelle stood beside him, healthy and strong, tears streaming down her face. "You ready?" she whispered. "Terrified." "Good. That means it's real." When Sarah reached him, when he took her hands and looked into her eyes, Justin felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, not because the past didn't hurt, but because he'd learned something these 3 years had taught him. Love isn't about certainty. It's about choosing someone even when you're scared, trusting even when you've been betrayed, showing up even when it's easier to run. His mother had shown him that his whole life, and now Sarah was teaching him to believe it again. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." They kissed, and in that moment, surrounded by people who'd fought beside them, Justin understood what his mother had been trying to tell him all along. True wealth isn't what you build. It's who stands with you when everything falls apart. That night, Justin and Michelle sat on his terrace, the city glowing below them. "You saved me twice," Michelle said softly. "Once in that hospital room, once by not giving up when everyone told you to. You saved me first. Every day of my life." She smiled. "That's what mothers do, and that's what sons do too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching lights flicker on across the city. Somewhere out there, Helen was in a cell. Audrey was getting help, and his father was living quietly with his regrets. But here, right here, there was healing. "You know what I realized," Justin said. "God gave me that instinct 3 years ago, that pull to come back to the hospital, and he gave it to me again when I recorded Helen on my phone." Michelle squeezed his hand. "Sometimes grace shows up as gut feelings, and sometimes it shows up as second chances, or both. Or both. If this story touched something deep in you, if it reminded you that even broken people can heal, that justice sometimes takes time, and that the people who love you are worth fighting for, please like, share, and subscribe to Elevated Heart Stories. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between justice and revenge? Because maybe this story found you for a reason. In the golden evening light, mother and son sat together, knowing that some battles are worth fighting, some people are worth protecting, and some loves are worth trusting, even when you're terrified. Justin had built an empire once, but sitting here with his mother, with Sarah inside making tea, with a future that finally felt possible. This was the only empire that mattered, and he'd spend the rest of his life protecting it.
Charles came home at 2:47 a.m., exhausted, ready to collapse into bed. But when he opened his bedroom door, he froze. His children's nanny was asleep in his bed, with Sophia and Nathan curled up on either side of her. And the house was silent. Charles Williamson hadn't heard silence like this in years. His wife Diane died 4 years ago during childbirth. The twins, Sophia and Nathan, came into the world the same moment she left it. They were 4 now, and almost every night since they were old enough to understand loss, they woke up terrified, screaming, crying, convinced that sleep meant disappearing forever, just like their mother did. Charles had tried everything. 17 nannies, specialists, therapists, millions of dollars. Nothing worked. Then, 3 weeks ago, the preschool called. Both children had fallen asleep during class and woke up hysterical. The teacher couldn't calm them. Other parents wanted them removed. That night, Charles made one last desperate call. "I need someone who understands grief, real grief. I'll pay anything." The agency sent Rachel Baker, 29 years old, no fancy degree, just a woman who'd lost her husband and baby daughter 6 years ago and somehow learned how to help broken children heal. When she arrived, she didn't bring protocols or plans. She just knelt down, looked at Sophia and Nathan, and said quietly, "I used to be scared to sleep too. After someone I loved went to heaven." Sophia whispered, "You were?" "Yes, but I learned something that helped." And for the first time in a long time, Charles saw something flicker in his children's eyes. Hope. What he didn't know was that 3 weeks later, everything would change. Before we continue, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes, when we've tried everything and feel completely alone, God sends exactly who we need, in the most unexpected way. The scream came at 2:34 a.m. Charles didn't need an alarm anymore. His body knew. 4 years of this, and he could feel it coming. That moment right before the terror started. "Daddy!" He was already moving. Down the hallway, barefoot, heart pounding. The children's room glowed with soft nightlights, stars on the ceiling, clouds on the walls, everything designed to bring peace. It never did. Both beds were empty. Sophia and Nathan huddled under the desk, clutching each other. Sophia's face streaked with tears, Nathan shaking so violently he couldn't speak. "She was here," Sophia whispered. "The shadow lady. She stood right there." Charles dropped to his knees, reaching for them. "There's nobody here, baby, I promise." "You always promise." Sophia's voice cracked. "But she keeps coming." Nathan finally spoke, his voice so small it barely made a sound. "Mommy promised too." And she left. The words shattered something inside Charles. 4 years old. They were 4 years old and already believed that promises meant nothing. He pulled them close, carried them to their beds, lay on the floor between them, holding their small hands in the darkness. "I'm right here. I won't leave." Sophia's grip tightened. "What if you close your eyes and disappear?" "I won't." "You don't know that." She was right. He didn't. And that terrified him more than anything. He stayed there for 2 hours, waiting, listening to their breathing slow, feeling their hands relax just enough that he thought, maybe, they'd finally fallen back asleep. He started to pull his hand away. Both children's eyes shot open. "Don't go!" So he stayed, on the floor, staring at the ceiling, watching the stars fade as morning light crept through the windows. His phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, board meeting at 9, critical, be there. Charles looked at his children, Sophia's hollow eyes, Nathan's trembling hands, the exhaustion carved into their small faces. He'd tried 17 nannies, specialists from the best hospitals, therapists, sleep consultants, millions of dollars spent. Nothing worked. And the worst part? He was starting to forget what his children's laughter sounded like. When the sun finally rose, Charles helped them downstairs, made breakfast they wouldn't eat, watched them sit at the table, too tired to even cry anymore. That's when his phone rang. The preschool. Charles's stomach dropped. It was only 7:45 a.m. School didn't even start until 8:30. "Mr. Williamson?" The director's voice was tight. "We need to talk about Sophia and Nathan, today, before you bring them in." Charles closed his eyes. What happened? "Yesterday. There was an incident. Other parents are concerned. We need to discuss whether—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Charles looked at his children, Sophia staring at nothing, Nathan's hands shaking around his juice cup, and he realized they were running out of time. Charles sat in the preschool director's office an hour later. Mrs. Palmer had always been kind. Today, her face looked different. "Yesterday during nap time, both children fell asleep at their tables." Charles leaned forward. "That's the first time they've slept during the day, and when Miss Caroline tried to wake them, they started screaming. Sophia wet herself. Nathan threw up. 16 other children saw it happen." Charles felt something break inside him. "Parents have called, Mr. Williamson. They're frightened. We love your children, but we're not equipped for this. They need help we can't provide." The drive home was silent. The children fell asleep in their car seats, finally asleep. Charles kept checking the mirror, waiting for the screaming to start. It didn't. When he pulled into the driveway, Nathan's eyes opened. "Daddy?" His voice was barely a whisper. Did Mommy die because she fell asleep? Charles nearly hit the brakes. What? She was sleeping and then she never woke up. So if we sleep, do we die too? Charles turned around, looked at his 4-year-old son who'd just connected sleep with death in his small, terrified mind. "No, buddy. Mommy had a sickness. Sleep didn't hurt her." Nathan's eyes said he didn't believe it. Sophia whispered, "Then why does the shadow lady come every time we close our eyes?" Charles had no answer. That night, after another battle, after lying on their floor for an hour, after they finally collapsed from exhaustion, Charles sat in his study at midnight. His hands trembled as he dialed. Pemberton Agency. "My name is Charles Williamson. I need help." His voice cracked. "I've tried 17 nannies, every specialist, every therapy. My children are 4 years old, and they think sleep is death. I need someone who understands grief, real grief, someone who's lost everything. I don't care about cost or credentials. I just need someone who can help them believe it's okay to close their eyes." Silence. Then, "Mr. Williamson, I have someone. Rachel Baker, 29, no degree. She lost her husband and infant daughter 6 years ago. Every child she's worked with has healed, but she's unconventional." "What does that mean?" "She doesn't follow traditional methods. Some families love her, others don't understand her approach. But if she comes, it's because she believes God put her there for a reason." Charles closed his eyes. "When can she start?" If she says yes tomorrow afternoon, tell her yes, please." The next day, Charles stood at his window at 3 p.m. A 15-year-old Honda Civic pulled into his driveway beside his Tesla. The door opened. A young woman stepped out, jeans, simple shirt, canvas bag over her shoulder. Charles opened his front door, and Rachel Baker looked up at him with eyes that had seen the same kind of loss he carried every single day. Rachel stood at the door, smaller than Charles expected. No briefcase, no confidence, just a young woman with a canvas bag. "Mr. Williamson, I'm Rachel." Charles stepped aside. She walked in, looked around at the high ceilings, the lake view through the windows. He waited for the usual reaction. Instead, Rachel said quietly, "Beautiful home. But they don't need beautiful. They need safe." "They're upstairs. They won't come down when strangers come." Rachel set her bag down. "Can I go up?" "I'll show you. I'll find them." She smiled. "Sometimes it's better if they don't see you watching." Charles stayed at the bottom of the stairs, listening. Rachel's voice came soft through the door. "Hi. Are you Sophia and Nathan?" Silence. "I'm Rachel. I'm not here to make you do anything. I just wanted to meet you." Nothing. "Can I tell you something?" Charles moved closer, staying out of sight. "I used to be scared at night too," Rachel said. "After my baby went to heaven. Her name was Emma. She was 6 months old." Charles froze. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, or I'd dream about her and wake up and she'd be gone all over again. So I stopped sleeping. For a really long time." Sophia's small voice. "You stopped sleeping too?" "Yeah, because it felt like losing her again every time." Silence. Nathan whispered, "Did the shadow lady take her?" Rachel took a breath. "I don't know about a shadow lady, but something took her from me, and I was scared that if it could take her, maybe it could take everyone." "That's why we can't sleep," Sophia said. "I know, honey." "But you sleep now?" "I do. It took time. But I learned something." "What?" "That the people we love don't leave us just because we close our eyes." Footsteps. Then the door opened. Rachel stood there with both children holding her hands. Charles stared. Sophia and Nathan, who hadn't touched a stranger in months, were holding her hands like they'd known her their whole lives. "Mr. Williamson, can we go outside? I think fresh air would help." As they walked past, Sophia looked back. "Daddy, Rachel's baby went to heaven too, like Mommy." Charles watched them walk into the backyard. Rachel knelt in the grass between them, talking softly. For the first time in 4 years, his children looked calm. But what Charles didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Rachel didn't just come to help his children sleep. She came to break every rule he thought mattered. And it would start that very night. That evening, Charles watched from the kitchen doorway as Rachel made dinner with the children. She wasn't doing anything special, just letting them help stir pasta, taste the sauce, laugh when flour dusted Sophia's nose. Simple things, normal things. Things Charles couldn't remember happening in his home for 4 years. "Daddy, look." Nathan held up a spoon. "I'm helping." Charles smiled, but something ached in his chest. How had this stranger walked into his house 6 hours ago and already made his children laugh? After dinner, Rachel glanced at the clock. Almost 7. Should we get ready for bed? Charles tensed. This was when everything usually fell apart, but Sophia just nodded. Okay. Rachel stood, took both children's hands. Let's go pick out pajamas. Charles followed them upstairs, staying back. He watched Rachel kneel beside their beds, talking softly while they changed. No rush, no forcing, just presence. All right, Rachel said. Who wants to hear a story? What kind of story? Sophia climbed into bed without being asked. A story about 2 brave kids who learned they were stronger than they thought. Nathan crawled into his bed too. Are we the kids? Rachel smiled. Maybe. Charles stood in the doorway, watching her sit on the floor between their beds. She pulled a small book from her bag, worn, pages soft from use. She began reading. Her voice was calm, gentle, the kind of voice that made you feel safe without trying. Sophia's eyes started to close. Charles held his breath. Nathan yawned. This couldn't be real. They never did this, never just settled. Rachel kept reading, her voice steady, unhurried, and slowly, impossibly, both children's breathing deepened. They were falling asleep. Charles felt tears burn his eyes. Rachel finished the story, set the book down, but she didn't get up. She pulled a thin blanket from her bag and spread it on the floor between the 2 beds. Charles stepped forward. Ms. Baker, you don't have to. Rachel looked up at him. Yes, I do. There's a guest room right down the hall. You'll be comfortable there. They won't be. Her voice was quiet but firm. They need to know I'm not leaving, so I'm staying right here all night. That's not necessary. Mr. Williamson. Rachel's eyes held his. How many nannies have you hired? 17. And how many of them stayed in this room all night? Charles was silent. None of them, right? They all went to their rooms, left the monitor on, checked in when the kids screamed. But they left. That's standard practice. Standard practice doesn't work for children who think being alone means dying. Rachel lay down on the floor, pulled the blanket over herself. I'm staying. If you want me to leave in the morning, I understand. But tonight, I'm staying. Charles opened his mouth to argue. Then Sophia whispered in her sleep, Don't go. And Rachel whispered back, I'm here, sweetheart, right here. Charles backed out of the room, closed the door halfway, went to his study, sat in the dark. At 2:47 a.m., he checked the monitor on his phone. The children were still asleep. Rachel was still on the floor. And Charles realized he had no idea what he'd just let into his home. Charles woke at 6:30 a.m. He sat up in bed confused. Dawn light streamed through the windows. Then it hit him. He'd slept. Actually slept. For the first time in 4 years, he hadn't woken to screaming at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. His phone was silent, no alerts from the monitor. Charles grabbed it, hands shaking, pulled up the camera feed. The children's room was peaceful. Morning light glowed across 2 small beds. Sophia was curled under her blanket, breathing softly. Nathan's arm hung off the side of his mattress, fingers relaxed. And Rachel, still on the floor between them, blanket pulled to her chin, eyes closed. They'd slept, all of them, the entire night. Charles stood, walked down the hall in bare feet, pushed open the door carefully. The room smelled like lavender. A small diffuser sat on the dresser, something Rachel must have brought. Soft music played from a phone, so quiet he could barely hear it. Rachel's eyes opened. She looked up at him, put a finger to her lips. Carefully, she stood, stepped over her blanket, and slipped out of the room. Charles followed her downstairs. In the kitchen, she poured water into a glass, drank slowly. They slept, Charles whispered. His voice broke. They actually slept. Rachel nodded. They woke up twice, around 1 and 3, but I just reminded them I was there. They went right back down. How did you? Charles couldn't finish. 17 nannies, 5 specialists. How did you do that in one night? Rachel set down the glass. I didn't do anything special, Mr. Williamson. I just stayed. That's all they needed. Someone who wouldn't leave. But the others tried. They tried from another room. They tried with monitors and schedules. But your children don't need monitoring. They need presence, real physical presence. They need to open their eyes in the dark and see someone there. Charles leaned against the counter. 4 years of agony, 4 years of exhaustion. And this woman had solved it by sleeping on the floor. I don't know what to say, Rachel smiled gently. You don't have to say anything. Just let me keep doing this. It'll take time, maybe weeks, but they'll heal, I promise. You're staying? If you'll have me. Charles felt something he hadn't felt in years, relief. Real, overwhelming relief. Yes, please. Stay as long as they need you. Rachel nodded. Then I should probably tell you something. What? This is just the beginning. What I did last night, sleeping on their floor. That's the easy part. Charles frowned. What do you mean? Rachel looked toward the stairs, then back at him. Your children don't just need someone to stay in their room, Mr. Williamson. They need to feel safe in yours. I don't understand. Rachel's eyes held his. You will. Soon. And before Charles could ask what she meant, footsteps sounded from upstairs, Sophia's voice still sleepy but calm. Rachel? Rachel smiled. Duty calls. She headed upstairs, leaving Charles standing alone in the kitchen. And he had no idea that what she'd just said would change everything. 3 weeks passed. The children slept through most nights now. Not perfectly. They still woke sometimes, still called for Rachel. But the screaming had stopped. The terror had faded. Charles watched his children transform. Sophia laughed again. Nathan ate breakfast without coaxing. They played in the backyard, told stories, drew pictures. Rachel still slept on their floor every night. She never complained, never asked for anything. Just stayed. Charles tried to thank her once. She'd smiled and said, You don't thank someone for doing what they're supposed to do. But Thursday afternoon, his CFO called. We have a crisis in Los Angeles. The client's threatening to pull the entire contract. You need to be there, tonight. Charles looked at Rachel, panic rising. I can't leave them. Rachel knelt beside Sophia and Nathan, who'd heard and were already clinging to their father. Daddy has to go help people with work, she said gently, just like doctors help sick people. But he's coming back, I promise. When? Nathan's voice trembled. Tomorrow. 1 sleep and he'll be home. Sophia looked at Rachel. Will you stay? I'm not going anywhere. Charles flew to Los Angeles, spent 18 hours in meetings, kept checking his phone, photos from Rachel, the children smiling, playing, eating lunch, a video, Nathan waving. Hi, Daddy, we miss you, but we're okay. Charles landed Friday at 2 a.m., exhausted, empty. He just wanted to collapse into bed. The house was dark when he walked in. Silent, beautiful, peaceful silence. He climbed the stairs, loosened his tie, pushed open his bedroom door, then froze. His bed, the king-sized bed where Diane used to sleep, where he'd spent 4 years alone, wasn't empty. Rachel lay in the center, peaceful, breathing softly. Sophia curled against her left side, small hand clutching Rachel's shirt. Nathan nestled against her right side, head on her shoulder. All 3 sleeping. The baby monitor on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Charles stood there, briefcase still in his hand, mouth open, unable to move. This was his bed, his private space, the room where his wife had died, where he'd grieved alone for 4 years, and this woman, this nanny, was sleeping there with his children, every professional boundary shattered, every rule broken. His first instinct was anger. She'd crossed a line. This wasn't appropriate. This was Then he looked at his children's faces, completely at peace, no trembling, no fear, just rest. For the first time in their entire lives, they were sleeping in their father's room, in the space that smelled like him, in the bed that represented safety and presence. And they weren't alone. Charles backed out slowly, closed the door, walked downstairs in the dark, sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking. What had just happened? What was Rachel doing? And why, despite every logical reason to be furious, did seeing his children finally at peace make him want to weep? At 6:30 a.m., he heard footsteps on the stairs. Rachel appeared in the doorway, eyes widening when she saw him. "Mr. Williamson, I can explain." Rachel stood in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes. Her voice was quiet. "I can explain." Charles set down his coffee cup. "You slept in my bed." "Yes." "With my children." "Yes." Silence filled the kitchen. Rachel stepped closer, sat down across from him. "They needed to sleep where you sleep, where it smells like you, where they can feel you even when you're not there." "You could have told me. Would you have said yes?" Charles didn't answer. "Your children have primal abandonment trauma," Rachel said softly. "Their mother died the moment they were born, so to them, your absence equals death. When you left for Los Angeles, their bodies believed you might not come back. They needed to be in your space, to feel surrounded by you, but they also needed someone to stay with them, someone to prove they weren't alone. So you broke every professional boundary." Rachel met his eyes. "Yes, I did." "Why?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because 6 years ago I was 23 years old. I had a husband, a baby girl named Emma. She was 6 months old." Charles's chest tightened. "We were driving home from dinner. A drunk driver ran a red light. My husband died instantly. Emma," her voice cracked. "Emma died 3 days later in the hospital. I was the only one who survived." The kitchen went completely silent. "For 2 years I wanted to die too," Rachel continued. "I couldn't understand why I lived and they didn't. But then I started volunteering with children who'd lost parents. And I realized something. I couldn't save my daughter, but I could help other children feel safe again. So that's what I've done. I break rules, I cross lines, I do whatever it takes to give children what they actually need, not what protocols say they should have." She looked at him. "Your children needed to sleep in your bed last night. They needed to feel you close, and they needed me to stay so they knew they weren't alone. So yes, I broke the rules. And if you want me to leave, I understand. But I need you to know, it worked. They slept. They felt safe. And that matters more than any boundary I crossed." Charles felt tears burning behind his eyes. "You lost everything when you were 23. So did you. So did they." He looked down at his hands. 4 years of exhaustion. 4 years of failing his children. And this woman, who'd survived the unthinkable, had given them peace by doing the one thing no one else dared to do. "Are you staying?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because if you leave now, they'll break again, and He stopped. "I don't think any of us can survive that." Rachel reached across the table. "I'm staying, as long as you need me." "What if they need you forever?" She smiled gently. "Then I guess I'm staying forever." Footsteps sounded from upstairs, small feet running. "Rachel," Sophia's voice called out. "Where are you?" Rachel stood. "I should go," but before she left, she turned back. "Mr. Williamson? Your children don't need a nanny anymore. They need someone who's willing to love them the way their mother would have. And sometimes that means breaking every rule in the book." She disappeared upstairs, and Charles sat alone, realizing that everything he thought he knew about healing, about boundaries, about what his children truly needed, had just been completely shattered. 2 months passed. The house felt different now, lighter, like something heavy had finally lifted. Sophia and Nathan slept through most nights. Sometimes they woke and called for Rachel. She'd come, sit on the edge of their beds, whisper something gentle. They'd close their eyes again. But the terror was gone. Charles watched his children become children again. They laughed, played, told jokes. Sophia started drawing pictures of butterflies. Nathan learned to ride his bike without training wheels. And Rachel, she was just there. Always there, making breakfast, reading stories, sitting in the backyard while they chased each other through the grass. One evening, Charles came home early, found Rachel and the children in the kitchen, flour everywhere, attempting to make cookies. "Daddy, look!" Nathan held up a misshapen blob. "I made a dinosaur," Sophia giggled. "That's not a dinosaur, that's a blob." "It's a blob dinosaur." Rachel laughed, really laughed, and something in Charles's chest shifted. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard joy like this in his home. That night, after the children were asleep, Charles found Rachel sitting on the back patio. She looked up when he approached. "They're getting better," she said softly. "Because of you." "No, because they finally feel safe." Charles sat beside her. "When I hired you, I thought you'd just be another nanny, another failed attempt," Rachel smiled. "And now? Now I don't know what you are." His voice was quiet. "You're not just the nanny anymore. You're part of them, part of us." Rachel looked away. "I should probably tell you something." "What?" "I haven't slept in their room for 3 weeks now. I sleep in the guest room. They're ready for that. They know I'm close, but they don't need me on the floor anymore." Charles felt something catch in his throat. That's incredible." "It is, but there's something else." "What?" Rachel turned to him. "Last week at preschool, Sophia's teacher asked who takes care of her at home, and Sophia said, 'My mommy, Rachel, and my daddy.'" The words hit Charles like a wave. "She called you mommy." "I didn't tell her to. She just did." Charles was quiet for a long moment. "Does that bother you?" "No." Rachel's voice was gentle. "It breaks my heart and heals it at the same time." "What do you mean?" "It breaks my heart because I know I'm not replacing their mother. I could never do that. But it heals it because—" She paused. "Because maybe this is why God let me survive when Emma didn't. So I could be here. For them. For you." Charles looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd walked into his life with nothing but a canvas bag and a broken heart. Who'd given his children peace when millions of dollars couldn't. "Rachel, I need to ask you something." She met his eyes. "Are you staying? Really staying? Because you've become so essential to them, to us, that if you left now, I'm not leaving." "But what if—" Rachel reached for his hand. "Charles, I'm not leaving. Not tomorrow, not next month, not ever, unless you ask me to." The air between them felt different, charged with something neither of them had named yet. "What if I don't want you to be the nanny anymore?" Charles whispered. Rachel's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "What if I want—" A sound from inside, Nathan's voice, sleepy but calm. "Rachel, I had a dream about dragons." Rachel stood quickly, squeezed Charles's hand. "I should go." But as she walked away, she looked back, and Charles knew. Everything was about to change. 6 months after Rachel arrived, Charles took the family to the coast for the weekend. It was Sophia's idea. "Can we go see the ocean? Please?" Nathan nodded eagerly. "We've never been." So they packed the car and drove 3 hours to a small beach town, rented a house right on the sand. Saturday morning, Charles woke early, found Rachel already outside watching the waves. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She smiled. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how different everything is now." Charles sat beside her. The children were still asleep inside. The ocean stretched out before them, endless and calm. "I never thought I'd have this again," Rachel said softly. "A family, people to care for, a reason to wake up happy." "You gave that to us first." She shook her head. "No. You let me in. You trusted me when I broke every rule. You could have fired me that morning when you found me in your bed with the kids, but you didn't. Because you were right. They needed it." Rachel turned to him. "Charles, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What are we doing?" His heart stopped. What do you mean? I'm not the nanny anymore. We both know that, but I don't know what I am. And I need to know, because I can't keep pretending this is just a job. Charles took her hand. Rachel, you're not the nanny. You haven't been for months. He stopped, finding the words. You're the person who saved my children, who brought life back into this house, who taught all of us that it's okay to love again. Then what does that make me? I don't know, but I know what I wanted to make you. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Charles stood, pulled her up with him. Rachel Baker, I'm 45 years old. 4 years ago, I lost my wife and thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone, watching my children suffer from something I couldn't fix. Then, you walked in with your old car and your canvas bag, and you broke every rule and gave us peace. You didn't replace what was lost. You rebuilt what was broken. And his voice cracked, I love you, and my children love you, and I don't want you to be the nanny. I want you to be their mother, and I want you to be... Yes. Charles stopped. I haven't asked yet. Rachel smiled through tears. I don't need you to. The answer is yes. Inside, footsteps. Sophia and Nathan appeared at the door, sleepy and curious. Why are you crying? Sophia asked. Rachel knelt down, pulled them both close. Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Really, really happy. Nathan looked at Charles. Is Rachel staying forever now? Charles looked at Rachel, at the woman who'd given up everything to heal his broken family, who'd lost her own child and chosen to love his, who'd taught them all that God doesn't waste our pain. He uses it to help us heal others. Yes, buddy, she's staying forever. Sophia threw her arms around Rachel. So you're our real mommy now? Rachel kissed her forehead. If that's okay with you. It's perfect. And as they stood there, 4 broken people who'd found each other in the darkness, Charles realized something. Healing doesn't come from money or credentials or perfect plans. It comes from someone willing to stay, someone willing to break the rules when the rules don't serve love, someone willing to sleep on the floor, cross every boundary, and love broken children as if they were her own. 3 months later, they married in the backyard. Small ceremony, close friends. And when Rachel knelt before Sophia and Nathan and promised to love them forever, to tell them stories about their first mommy, to never leave them, both children whispered, "We love you, Mommy Rachel." That night, Charles stood in his bedroom doorway, the same spot where he'd stood 9 months ago, shocked and confused. Now, Rachel sat on the bed waiting for him with a smile. "Come home," she whispered, and Charles finally did. The house that had been full of screaming for 4 years was now full of laughter. The children who couldn't sleep now slept peacefully every night. And the man who thought he'd lost everything learned that sometimes God takes the broken pieces of our lives and creates something more beautiful than we ever imagined. Not by erasing the pain, but by sending someone who understands it. Someone willing to stay in the dark until the light comes back. And it always does. If you let it.